Hello, it's me, Jay, your DM. I use he, him.
It's me, Air. I use he and him.
I'm Jerika. I use she, her. And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions to retrieve the treasure of charisma. Oh, wait. It's wisdom.
Oh, I was so close to believing
Welcome
that.
to the podcast. This is a podcast, and we are a comedy D&D advice podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome.
That's definitely our usual intro.
This is your last time listening. Please let us know why from the following
Yeah.
options. I am in this podcast and I don't like it.
Higher numbers are worse. Lower numbers are better.
Yeah, great. So we're back. The three of us. Can you believe it? Already.
Ba-bam.
Boom.
Just three perverts hanging out.
Hey, what?
Whoa.
Why?
That's our
Explosion.
brand
Didn't even
now.
ask my question about Tim Curry. How could you know?
it's our brand.
Wait, perverts are our brand?
Yeah, our brand is that we're
No.
perverts.
No. No.
And we have questions to answer.
No, let's please.
like our
At
like
least-
in a perverted voice.
No. God,
Yes.
stop.
Yes.
We
We're
like
going to
answering
do it.
questions on our
How great is your sword?
How deep is
Wow.
your love? Is your
I
love
hated that.
deep?
I
Is
really
your
didn't
love
like that.
deep?
And it was my fault. I'm the one who invited that into the world.
'Cause
So
we're living in
all right.
a world of fools, breaking us down, so they all should let us be. We belong to you and me. Okay, are we good now? Are we not perverts anymore?
a Jerika in motion will remain in motion until acted on by an
Yeah.
outside force. Hey, on this podcast, we answer questions, specifically questions that you send us. We really like those, so send more. We
Where
got
can they
some
send them, Jay?
to Insight Check Pod, of course. We got one from something like that. At something like that. How much
Don't
should
lick
a
it.
DM change a character's backstory through new context? When does it cross the line from character development to ruining the player's story?
This is a great question.
It is.
My answer is get consent. I see Jerry and Amy looking across the table at each other. They're doing a communication with their eyeballs where they're like, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. You okay? Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, but you should also probably
Talk
Have
with
that-
your mouth hole? Yeah.
have that conversation with your words before the session, and not when they're live in front of 1,000 people, and feel maybe a certain amount of social pressure to agree to a situation. It's good to ask your player. I think that if you and your DM have been playing together for a while, there's a certain amount of like trust that comes from that, and people are gonna be kind of like okay with changes that you make because they trust that you're going to respect what they brought to the table. That's really the key, is like if you're still respecting the original story that came to your table and you're adding elements that are interesting to both you and the player, then it's fine. But like if you're just like, oh, the player brought me a 3-page story, but I don't like this part, and I don't like this part, and I don't like this part, and you just change it without telling them, that's not nice.
I want to say, so that's from the DM perspective. From the player perspective, now this is definitely something that can come from trust with your DM, but it's also a great way to establish trust with your DM is to leave holes in your backstory. One of the, I'm going to cite Dungeon World again, Jay, so just cover your ears and do the la-las.
Dungeon World. I feel like the anti-Adam Coble, where Adam Coble gets like accused of hating Dungeons and Dragons all the time because he dares to speak ill of it. I'm like the reverse. I dare to speak ill of Dungeon World, and therefore I'm accused of hating it. I don't hate it. It's just not the system for me.
Yeah, and that's fair. One of the kind of tenets of it is to draw maps and leave blanks. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And you can do it purposefully as a player. You can say, I don't know anything more about this, character from my PC's backstory. Feel free to run rampant. I know with my backstory, Jay definitely sussed out the themes, which was my character has mommy and daddy issues. and made the
My favorite kind of issues.
of course,
Yeah.
made the person he was seeking revenge upon actually end up being his father, which was an interesting turn.
Yeah.
So, it kind of put things in a completely new light. This person who was, kind of the head of the Bard college that they were drummed out of, drum them out, but maybe it was to protect them. Maybe it was to teach them a lesson, parentally, that kind of thing. So definitely leave some space in your backstory. I know a lot of people want to run rampant with character development, but give your DM some hooks so that they can get their story into your backstory.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Well, it's an interesting question. I do think holes make a lot of sense, but at some point you're looking back and you're doing the maybe filling in some things the character doesn't know, but at some point I like to have growth and change in my characters. Mm-hmm. So where you're going forward to me is the most compelling. So I don't know.
So for you, it doesn't particularly matter so much what they change about your backstory, because they can't. One thing the DM really can't change is the story, like that actually transpired at the table.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing some really weird shit, like what happened at the table happened. Like it didn't.
Dream.
Yeah. Or it's all a dream, or something like a retcon where you're just like, oh yeah, you guys walked into here and talked to this guy. It's like, no, we didn't. Oh, yeah, you did. You talked to him off camera. It was great. You really enjoyed this person. You liked them a lot. No, we don't. We don't know who that is. Oh, yeah, it happened. Off camera.
So to me, it's much more compelling instead of being like, oh, that guy you thought was your cousin who had a big, influence on your life is not that. Or this thing that happened in your backstory is not what you thought. Like that's kind of that's getting into like, okay, well maybe my character is completely different than I thought, but like for me it's more interesting to say like to have a ground, like a foundation for your character, and then be able to proceed forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that's just a style of play kind of difference too, where you like, and I can tell just from the backstories that you've given me as your backstories are less about the thing that you still have to do.
Yeah.
And they're more about the sort of events that sort of made this person.
Right. That's like the foundation of them, and then going
right,
forward.
Exactly. So like Ayer presents a story where there's still a villain out there that needs to be dealt with, and that's providing plot hooks for the future, whereas yours is more like providing a foundation for this character that's really interesting and probably has some real flaws or concerns that are ongoing, and those provide stories more for the party than necessarily for the narrative of the game. Like your character being like a weird cyber person in our New York game. It provided a lot of mystery early on, because why was Jerika the only person who played a character who was in New York?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
like, why did Jerika suddenly disappear when the game closed and stuff like that? It was always like really. It was more for the party than it was maybe the ongoing arc of the story.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Jerika, in the game I ran for us, I had your druid.
Which one?
The Dungeon World one.
Dungeon World?
Yeah,
Okay.
the one where you became the
druid.
chosen one.
The chosen one, the leggy druid. Well, that was my question. Did you feel...
So I did something completely different with that character. In that I had her be a tabula rasa.
Yes.
A blank slate. And so, in a way, it's the same thing because...
Yeah, because what defines them is that they're a blank slate.
Yeah, exactly.
Amnesiac, yeah, so...
But I have a hard time changing how my character acts. Like, I have, like a specific way that I think of them. And so, like... Yeah. With new information or with like a shift in a backstory, it's tough for me to be like, and I guess like, a person in real life would have to deal with this too, right? They'd have to be like, well, what part of that is my, mother that I didn't think was my mother, and what part of that is me, right?
Yeah. I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that, like you're saying, that's perfectly legitimate to reality, is like, Just because you've learned this new thing about your past doesn't mean that you're any different than you were yesterday. Somebody having done something to you doesn't necessarily make you that person. Like, you know, oh, my dad was, or this person I thought was my rival is actually my dad. Doesn't change Bertrand, but it does.
Oh,
it does.
My mom's actually a diamond. Oops, what?
Yeah. But like this person who was my rival is actually my father. It doesn't change like Bertrand's like animosity towards that person. It just changes the like tone, because now he can't just go out and kill him because this is dad. So it's like now what do I do with this anger? What do I do with this? What do I do with this frustration towards this person, or this hatred towards this person now that he's my dad? Like, do I still
Get him locked up in jail?
Yeah, exactly.
So like with my Dungeon World character, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head.
It's been a while.
Like, I was very ready to, but at the same time, she was like very much like roll with the punches, and you know, she did have a tiny bit of a character, which was that she had this form that she had, which was the maned wolf, and so she very much was kind of taking a lot of cues from that, because that's what she had that was solid. At the same time, you know, and I think my picture was that was kind of her core anyway. You know, come what may, that would be like her touchstone kind of thing.
Yeah.
The reason I asked was because you had given me like an amnesiac background. So I was like, oh, this is open season. And because you had gotten it to me so early, it kind of, that little arc we ran was kind of wrapped around your character primarily. So I was like, how was it knowing like, oh, this is...
Well, Jerika always likes being in the spotlight.
Okay, well, then not a problem.
It's fine.
Okay.
But then you also, I mean, you can compare that to like my Mauve backstory, which is a lot. And that's very much like my traditional approach, which is have a basis for this character to work off of.
There is a rich backstory there, faux show, and I love it.
But like at the same time, you're like, hey, who's this character in her backstory? Who's that character? So there's definitely like, I mean, in any backstory, there's going to be things that the person writing it didn't flesh out, because otherwise they'd be insane. So there's always, you know, there's always room there to be like, oh, maybe this person will come back, and we'll move the narrative even further or whatever.
A lot of this question can be solved just through, as usual, just like some communication. If you feel like your DM is changing too much about your character and you feel like it's not your character anymore, you can talk to your DM and they can like correct course on that. Or, you know, if you give a very fleshed out story to your DM and you're the DM and you get this really filled in story that you don't feel like you can do anything with, you should talk to your player and be like, hey, do you mind opening up some spaces where I could play around? How about this or that? Could we make this sort of an unknown? And yeah, just communicate with your players. And respect the source material. If you get a backstory from your players, use it. Don't just get it and throw it away. Incorporate it somehow. Put something of that in there, even if it's just the themes or the elements or the at least take inspiration from it, because your players gave it to you because it meant something to them. And I think that's pretty much...
Malvidian asks, Warlocks, awesome character class or the best character class?
Awesome character class.
It's a great class. I mean, Warlocks have actually, funnily enough, D&D Beyond recently released their statistics on the top played classes, and Warlock is the 4th top played class.
Really?
Overtaking Wizard and every other spellcaster.
Where is Druid?
Yep, it's over Druid.
No.
What's number 1?
I'm special.
It is Fighter number 1, which has always been true for all of D&D.
Nah, it's
the simplest, easiest, basic one. Yeah. So Fighter's number 1. Number 2 is Rogue. Number 3
pronounced Rouge.
Right. Number 3 is Cleric.
Really
and then number 4 is Warlock. Now, because you think of the traditional party, right? And it's Fighter, Rogue, Cleric, Wizard, right? So Wizard is number 5 and has been vying for number 4, like been swapping back and forth at number 4. But it's like the first time the Wizard has ever in the history of D&D been challenged for that 4th place. Like it always goes Fighter, Rogue, Cleric, Wizard. But like now, for whatever reason, Warlock is up there.
Maybe Chris Straub has something to do with it.
Chris Straub and, of course, Critical Role, watched by 50,000 people a week, has Travis Willingham as a Warlock. So,
Wait,
yeah, that could...
Ford is a Warlock?
Ford is a Warlock.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That I was not expecting.
He's a Blade Lock.
He's a
so
Hexblade,
a Pact of the Blade Warlock. They're pretty tough. Pact of the Blade, they're pretty good melees. Anyway, another good one he asks is, what do you think the optimal party size is and why?
4.
I feel like I've mentioned this previously.
4.
I'm gonna say 5.
4.
I was going to say 3, so 4. I guess we average it out at 4?
3, 4, 5, yeah.
4, I was right, ha.
I say 5 because then if somebody's missing, it doesn't cripple everybody.
I see. So you're saying 4, but 4 plus.
4 plus 1, yeah.
Well, I feel like 5 is enough people that it takes the pressure off any one player to be like the face of the party, right? There's enough voices that there should always be at least 2 people talking.
I like 3 or 4 because I like to role play.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives enough talking time for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that has more to do with our session length than it does our number of players.
Maybe.
Like 2 hours is, but I guess Critical Role or C Team.
Say Critical Role again, Jay.
Yeah.
I dare you.
C Team plays for 2.5 hours, and they have plenty of time to roleplay. Yeah. 4's a pretty good size. I feel like anything less than 4, and you're getting into the point where combat gets really swingy. Because if one person goes down, now there's only 2 people left, and it's like, ooh, boy. It can get really tough, especially with like a 2-person party or a 3-person party. Like one goes down, and you've lost a dramatic amount of your action economy.
So then you could have more guest combat people, right?
Yeah, you could introduce NPCs and stuff like that, yeah.
That's what I meant. I'm so glad you interpreted my lip slappings properly.
Ayer, why do you prefer 3? Is it the intimacy?
Well, because I'm not too worried about combat and balance, the intimacy. I think it's nostalgia. I started my first campaign. I started off with 3 players and 3 PCs and a DMPC of whom we shall not speak.
We talked about them a lot already. Go back to our earliest episodes where we talk about DMPCs.
But I think, it's mostly about making sure everyone gets a chance and everyone gets a turn, and I'm not dancing. I would say it's probably between 3 and 5, so 4 if you want to average it. But you are right that if you are gonna lose folks, I never want to not run because someone can't make it, because schedules are always such a pain in the butt. So like in our last Star Trek Powered by the Apocalypse game, unfortunately our friend Maxie couldn't make it, but there is a rule in the game where you can issue orders to someone who falls within within the rank structure. So they could order the doctor to go and heal someone if they needed to. So Maxie could still kind of have we'd still have the doctor there in the background to serve their functional role if someone needed healing,
right?
But could just kind of lay back for the RP moments because the player wasn't there.
Sure.
So that was kind of handy. But yeah, 3 to 5, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I feel like anything over 6 can get really cumbersome, and people start getting left out and like fading into the background. 7 can be really difficult. 8 can be super hard. Things get so slow, especially with the length of the sessions that I run. 2-hour sessions. It can be hard to get the 5 players I have or the 4 players I have in my other game through everything like in 2 hours. Like it just 2 hours flies by. I can't imagine with 8 players we wouldn't get anything done. We would just it would be like, okay, this is part 1 of this encounter, we'll go ahead and get through half of it, and then next week we'll get through the other half.
Yeah, they're just saving you prep time.
I think that having more players in a co-located space can speed it up a little bit, because you can see cues and all that kind of stuff. I think it's much, much, much more difficult online.
Yeah, but like with online, you have dice rollers and damage rollers and like character sheets like that are literally like right at your
It's not
glance,
about
and you can click.
that. It's about Oh, is it my turn? Oh, what are you doing? It's
Yeah, but
there's
those
some
things
cues.
speed up combat too. Those like digital tools. Like I feel like digital combat
I think
runs
it kind of
super fast.
like it kind of is it's an apples to orange comparison. The body language is hard to quantify because in a role play scenario, it can kind of be like, do I really need to get this word in edgewise, or should I really just because I got a good zinger, but no, I'm gonna sing back because this person's kind of giving me the look. It's a lot harder to judge that as a time saver, but I definitely feel that it can be. There's definitely when we have played games, or at least I've seen when our group has played games where we saw each other, like the Modron game that Maz ran us through. One of the comments was, it was so nice to see each other. I could get a better sense of kind of when a person wanted to jump in, or
I feel like online play goes so much quicker in my experience, but I don't know. I can't speak to that. I don't know.
I think it also depends.
I don't know. Stop asking. All right. Anyway.
This question is from Malvidian. Should PCs be allowed to wear additional magic rings on their toes?
No.
No.
What about their dicks, Jay?
No.
What?
Well, knock those out real fast. Moving right along. Matt Will Jackson has brought us something from Facebook, and this time it wasn't something we hated. It was from the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition Facebook group. It says, can a group of 5 level 10s beat a level 20 Circle of the Moon Druid, Party Comp, Paladin, Sorcerer, Fighter, Warlock, Bard/Cleric?
No.
So does Bard/Cleric mean a Bard/Cleric multi-class or
I
a
think
Bard
so.
or Cleric?
I think it's a Bard/Cleric multi-class. This is a very specific question.
I would argue a Cleric.
It's or.
I think it's and or, and I think it has to be Cleric. If you want to stand a chance, it has to be Cleric. I say yes under one situation, and that is that you get a hold person off first round, first in initiative. That is the one time you can win.
I think it depends on how much healing potions they have.
If it gets to the point where you're starting to drink potions, the level 10 party has lost. Because the level 20 Circle of the Moon Druid can just wild shape every round. So they basically have to kill the Circle of Moon Druid in one turn.
Yeah.
Because at level 20, they can just wild shape infinitely. They don't have a limit. They can just keep going. Every turn, they can reset their hit points.
What's the maximum powerful thing they can? It's just an elemental, right? I mean, I say just an elemental, but
yeah, probably.
at level 20, a fire elemental is just an elemental. I don't think the higher CR beasts, I think an elemental would be better than the highest CR beast you could turn into, like a T-Rex or whatever. I think the elemental would still win out, but even then at level 20, it's not all that many HP.
They also have hit point healing.
That's true. They can do
spell slot. Sorry, spell slot.
Spells. Yeah, they can just burn spell slots to heal D8s while they're wild shaped, right?
While they're wild shaped.
Yeah, that's so good. This is so very good.
That's why I play it as my default.
Let's see. So, Archdruid, you can use your wild shape an unlimited number of times. Additionally, you ignore the verbal and somatic components of your druid spells, as well as any material components that lack a cost and aren't consumed by spell. You gain this benefit in both your normal shape and your B shape from wild shape.
Yeah.
Beast spells, beginning at 18th level, you can cast many of your druid spells in the wild shape. So yeah, as an archdruid, you can wild shape an unlimited number of times. You can go into an earth elemental who has something along the order of 150 hit points.
126
hit points. So you have your druid 150 hit points, and then your earth elemental 120 hit points. So you have about 270 hit points, and you're fighting a group of level 10s though. But this is the thing. Here's the thing. Is level 10 is pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
Level 10, you have access to all of your base class features. I mean, you're one. It really sucks for the fighter because they're one level off from 3 attacks, which would really help. And also as a paladin, you're 1 level off from an extra D8 every round, which would really help. But I mean, your paladin has smites up to 3rd level, or at least 2nd level. And then your fighter has 2 attacks per round. Your sorcerer has 5th level spells.
Do you think that constitutes 270 damage in one round?
A 5th level spell could do at least 30 to 50 damage. I mean, it could be like Disintegrate, right? Is Disintegrate 5th level? Is that 6th or 5th?
I think it's 6th.
Dang. Disintegrate would be huge. Disintegrate would... 11th level would be the difference then.
Yeah, probably.
If it was 5 level 11s, for sure they could
Obviously.
win. 5 level...
6th.
Yeah, obviously. 1 level.
Why would we even ask that? So
Also at level 11, you gain plus 6 to hit versus plus 3. Or plus... I mean, sorry. Plus 4 to hit versus plus 3, right? Your proficiency goes up at level 11. Yeah. So level 11, you gain a 3rd attack on your fighters, your proficiency goes up, and you gain 6th level spells. That would be huge. 5 level 10s, though. That would be tough. I wouldn't bet against the 5 level 10s, though. PCs are stronger than you could ever imagine. If they could get that hold person off, put it in a paralysis state, get automatic crits, paladin smite with those crits.
Who knows what magic items they have?
We're going to assume no magic items for the sake of argument. We can't. The edge cases get too wild.
Anti-druid staff.
Yeah. The circle of druid fucking. Does 20d8 versus druids.
Yeah, that.
That is the kind of homebrew you can find on dndwiki.com.
Oh man, if it was level 11, it would be a sure thing. Level 10 is tough.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we brainstorm beyond level 20 features that we might want to pursue?
Okay. In 4th edition, this was called epic tier play between level 20 and 30.
Yes.
So the DMG, first of all, we'll go to the DMG's answer for this. The DMG has one offer, which is that for people who go to level 20 and continue to play, they have these things called epic boons, which whenever you would level up, you could give them an option of this list of boons, and it's different things. Like, I think one of the Warlock ones is that they can just, like, cast a spell whenever they want. They just get to pick an extra spell that they can cast whenever they want. And there's ones for each class, like these, like, epic tier boons. But if we wanted to just be like, no, I want to keep going level-wise up from 20 to 30, some powers that we could impart on our players. That's interesting. I think for Warlocks, it's easy, right? It would be additional slots. Right, like at level 20, I think they have 3, maybe 4 slots. Going up to 5 or 6 slots immediately makes the Warlock even more powerful. And they get all those back on a short rest, so like having 6 level slots would be crazy.
Yeah, so things like key points for the monk and sorcery points for the sorcerer.
Yeah, exactly, those kind of things. And they go up with level built in, so that's easy to ad hoc introduce. Like, let's see, I think one of the things that was interesting in the way that 5th edition or 4th edition looked at it is that basically after level 20 you started taking on traits of a god. Like, you started to become literally no longer mortal in those levels. Like, you would just gain features that were like so... Like, you were so far removed from human levels of power.
Like, immune to everything except this one very niche specific case where they cut your hair off first or something.
Sort of. Like how the monk has, like, timeless body, right? Where they just stop aging at a certain level. But you could do something like that where, you know, when you hit level 23, maybe all characters just don't have a maximum lifespan anymore. Maybe they could theoretically go on in perpetuity. These people have, like, taken on, like, an aspect of divinity or something in their power. That's also something interesting because it offers roleplay benefits and, like, story benefits as opposed to really ramping up the power at each level, because because 20th level characters are already really strong. But part of the fun of going beyond 20th level is that you start to be absurd, right?
Yeah.
The absurd levels of power and, like, starting to fight things that are so insane.
And solving the big problems.
You could remove the stat limit of, like, level 20. Like 20 is like the limit on most stats. You could just remove that past level 20, and now they can go up to 30 in stats. So now they could have bonuses of, like, plus 5. Now it could be plus 10 at the peak. That would be interesting.
I would like
more
to start
ability scores.
Yeah, I really want to see, like, once you start getting into that level, because at that level you're taking on like gods and like, you know, dimension challenging entities.
Every threat has to be world ending at that level.
Exactly. So you're getting into like god
Wouldn't
territory.
that be fun?
I want to see things like, because I'm looking at some of these boons where it's like, you know, the boon of high magic, you get an extra 9th level spell slot so long as you have one. The boon of combat prowess, if you miss with a melee attack, you choose to hit instead, but you can only use it once. Like, they've still tried to balance it. I would really love to see more like creative, out of the box things, like all the ideas a player would come up with for like the wish spell, where like it has a chance of murdering you or whatever. Those would be the kind of things I'd want, but not, or divine intervention.
Or like reincarnation, but you get to pick your own.
Like
a druid's ultimate wild shape. When you hit 0 hit points, choose a form and you become that.
Oh, see, that's a great idea.
So like, it's no longer like your you're not taking on the aspect of another form. You are immutably formed. Like, you are something else every time. Or for fighter, you could give them something like reliable talent, but for melee weapon attacks, just always have a 10. You know, I always get a 10 on melee attacks.
Yeah, because there's still, with anything, there's still, you know, you're still rolling to hit, and you're still, you know, rolling to hit a DC, and you're still rolling for damage. And so if you make those things, those thresholds higher and higher for what you get automatically, that could be an interesting way to do it. I just had a really cool idea for a campaign. Go like open Sword Coast Adventurers guide, flip through the god pages, pick one of those. That's your new PC. Like, that sounds like fun. Yeah.
That would absolutely be awesome.
Yeah.
I like the idea of like having those flavorful like class specific things, like as you're becoming a god of the arts if you're a bard, or a god of nature as a druid. Like a bard, like, you know, one of the ways you can express this kind of high level power is it could be like you tell the story of how you want this encounter to go, and there can be some sort of role involved or not, but percentile dice, you know, and it could be like those 4 levels of success like you've done with Kiestra. The story is exactly as you told it. The story is close to how you told it. It's not the story you told. It is the exact opposite of what you said that occurs, or something like that. But, you know, it's still world shaping, but it has a chance to it. Yeah.
Mechanically, your inspiration die could just become a success.
Yeah.
So, like, as a bard, like at a certain level, you tell them how it goes.
Yeah,
and then it just goes that way.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Because then it's like really collaborative, and it's like maybe you're actually like physically shifting who the DM is. Like, oh my gosh, could you imagine? That would be crazy. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
my
epic
mind
level
just
play.
got blown.
Yeah, epic level play is something that a lot of people enjoy because it is so far removed from normal Dungeons and Dragons. It is just like wild. Threats and challenges begin to sort of break down at that level, and it becomes very strange and abstract in perhaps a way that's interesting.
It reminds me of the darkness from the Adventure Zone and the arc that they played in where they're being chased by this like force across like the galaxy,
the stolen
basically.
century.
Yeah, just because it's like it's basically they're fighting darkness and evil. Like that's what they're anyway.
And there's no fighting it.
Yeah,
like it is so overwhelmingly beyond their capacity to affect that they're just sort of choosing how to lose.
Yeah,
like it's interesting. Adventure Zone gets wild there at the end, y'all. You gotta check it out.
Yeah, I have one more question. If Tim Curry was a D&D monster, what would he be?
I mean, there's a strong play for Baylor, right? Like just legend. There's a strong play there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he would, because he has a pleasant aspect in his human form. I feel like he would be a shapeshifter where he could be this like unassuming British guy.
The ultimate
and
actor.
then the ultimate actor, the consummate con artist. And then like he transforms into the devil.
The devil who's always looking for soup.
Sales. I might
Tim
be
Curry.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry is a
High charisma.
14-year-old's OC. He's half angel, half devil. He has a clown nose. Weird suspenders.
Definitely garters and stockings.
Definitely. And his name is XXX Sephiroth Killer. And he's buck wild. Let's all be real here. We don't deserve Tim Curry.
It's true.
He's been too many crazy things.
He would be a charisma monster.
Oh yeah, charisma 30. I'm trying to think. I guess a doppelganger is good, like because they are an actor and they take a lot of shapes, so makes sense. Alternatively, green slod, a chaos
Impregnate
being.
you with frog eggs.
Well, they're a chaos being. They have a lot of spells and they can shape change.
But they're gross.
Well, sometimes Tim Curry can be gross. Did you see them in It? Or not
no.
It, the one with the clown.
That's
it.
That is it.
You
Okay.
got it.
Yeah.
You were right about it.
Great.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Green slod.
No.
Tim Curry is a green slod. You heard it here first.
He's Strahd. That's what you said, right? He's a green Strahd.
He could be
He actually could be
Strahd's
Strahd.
also-
I'm now doing an image search for Tim Curry.
Oh my god, he would definitely play Strahd in the movie.
Like straight up, like Rocky Horror Picture Show. Tim Curry is the Strahd wants to be. If he wasn't, if he didn't have a certain image to put forth to the Barovians.
if Strahd wasn't a sad sack emo, he would
We're
be
gonna
Tim Curry.
definitely add Sean Von Z on Twitter. With all this shade. You wish you were Tim Curry. Anything else?
I mean, I don't know if we're gonna end on a stronger note than what Dungeons and Dragon creature is Tim Curry.
Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode of Insight Check. If you have opinions on what kind of monster Tim Curry is, go ahead and leave that in our
Level
iTunes
15
comments.
Druid, tell me.
Yeah, also at level 15 Druid. Was level 14, but gained a level. We're all very proud.
Level up.
Or send a message at Insight Check, where you can also send us questions for us to answer.
And Jay means at Insight Check Pod.
At Insight Check Pod, that's correct. Follow our Twitch too, it's great.
Yeah.
And as always, we want to thank Vinswept for our intro and outro music, Never Stand Alone. And we want to thank Amy T. Falcone for our faces. Without you, we would not have faces. And that would be unfortunate. And as usual, we're
Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
was
Insight.
Check.
Good. Me. And other sounds as well.
Don't you dare talk about my mama. Hello and nope, that's not what we do. I'm me, Jay. You're him.
You're him.
It me, Jay. Nope,